Okay, well, I'm from the apparel industry. I've worked in the background of manufacturing, I've worked in brands, and I'm currently with a consultancy now, working with various brands around the world. I want to talk about industry-wide collaboration. So, does that silver bullet actually exist? Well, for the brands and retailers in the apparel and textile space, we had to find one very quickly. I want to give an example of why and how we did this, why it was necessary, and why a technology platform drove the success. So back in 2011, Greenpeace published a now infamous publication called Dirty Laundry, which was reporting about widespread water pollution that was being caused by the garment industry. This coincided with their campaign, which was the detox campaign. And what that was quite a brutal campaign where they started to attack the brands. They were demonstrating outside stores, they were taking down websites. So we had to all stand up and take a little bit of notice because it was damaging business. Over the next 3 years, it actually forced executives in boardrooms of brands to sign a public declaration of actually a commitment to reduce hazardous chemicals in their supply chain. Now that pressure was so great that many signed that without really understanding the impact of what it could have on their products and to meet those timelines. So within days, the industry was very much on the back foot. So why do we need collaboration? Oh, sorry, it's just gone. So why do we need collaboration? It's because challenges like that are too big to be faced alone. You know, not one brand is big enough to combat the whole problem in one go. So transforming the industry requires collaboration, transparency, and commitment. Therefore, it's obvious for us to come together and to bring a small number of brands together, which we did in the initial stage. There was about 5 brands that came together, and we formed Zero Discharge of Hazardous Chemicals Group, which was ZDHC Group, the abbreviation of it all. We all knew there was a problem out there, but there was no shortage of NGO pressure or media attention that was driving the whole thing. And while we might have agreed with the methods of Greenpeace, we have to thank them for being the catalysts of actually bringing us all together as brands and focusing our minds. We have a very complex supply chain, and if we're going to eliminate the chemicals, we also have to engage the wider chemical industry, many of whom are global players. They don't only supply the one industry, so to get that, we needed to collaborate and move together. So what did we do to achieve this? What do we need to do? Firstly, we need to form a coalition. Initially, it was a group of signature brands who contributed to the funding of the initial groundwork, which was also mainly around fact-finding, really finding the position of what the state of the industry was. Was it true what these campaigners were saying? We didn't totally understand the position. So the first year was very much about finding the facts. The actual demands from Greenpeace were to eliminate 11 major groups of chemicals, and that's what all the brands have signed up to, with a very tight timescale to do that. That meant it was going to affect thousands of chemical formulations that we're using within our industry. So if the coalition was going to be successful, it was apparent that we not only should include the brands within the organisation, we also had to bring in other stakeholders. That's the suppliers, the chemical companies and service providers. Work streams and task teams were established very quickly to work to a manageable time frame and break it down into work-sized chunks. The main thing was to establish a common framework to be developed with an ambition really to develop a global standard. The backbone of which was the ZDXC MRSL. That's the Manufactured Restricted Substance List. It's a list of substances that which we needed to eliminate from the supply chain or be substituted. It was important, if we were going to engage those large chemical companies, we didn't try and boil the ocean in once. We need to make that MRSL challenging but achievable. It was important that we went at that sort of pace to get realistic limits and be able to phase out and get the substitution necessary. Some of these things were not easy to substitute in one go. I'll give you an example. The PFC groups, which was a durable water repellent, which was what you put onto raincoats and things like that. For those that were making apparel to just go out in the night, it was quite easy to get an alternative to actually substitute that. But for those that were making mountain mountain jackets and things like that, where it's actually life-threatening to actually have that durability, that had to get a substitute that was going to work, be effective, and also not be a regrettable substitute. So now we've got the standards and guidelines. The focus shifted to how we can demonstrate progress, and then through actually give some impact reporting to feedback to the outside world. Brands needed to report on their progress that they've made on their commitments, their public commitments. So at the time, at the start of all this, there was a lot of large spreadsheets about, which were all being pulled together, a lot of data that's being brought together, but it was held within individuals' organisations. We needed to get that to be able to share it, bring it together, but at the same time, put it onto a platform where we could share it with stakeholders, but keep the confidentiality in place and avoid duplication of effort. We also needed to build and engage with other stakeholders, and governments and international bodies. And if we're going to build a platform, we also needed to get funding to do that. It was obvious that to scale, track funding, and to gain international credibility, a change was required. So we moved from being a group of coalition of brands, because nobody really wants to fund brands, and to become a legal entity in its own right and with its own governance. So in 2015, ZDXD Foundation was formed. With a new entity now in place, we could focus on the development of the platform, the ZDXD Gateway, as it became known, which were later to become the central platform for all facets of the organisation. Funding was gained through a foundation. It was actually the CNA Foundation that funded the initial work that we did, and we appointed ADEC Innovations as being our technology partner for building the platform. This is the original group of people I've shown you on the screen here, the smiling faces. And that's back in 2015. It's now grown to a larger international organisation. So it's gone out of all shape of what you're seeing on that picture now. But we built the platform originally designed to be based around the MRSL, and really we had a platform where we took certifications that were already in existence. We didn't want to reinvent invent the certifications that were out there. We wanted to take those and be able to put those against the standards, the guidelines that we were putting together, and allow the chemical companies to upload those onto the gateway. We trusted them to do that, but the system also then required us to verify it. So we worked very much on this trust but verify model. So this is just a quick look at some of the process that we did, where we took the gateway, we fed that to the formulations into the gateway. Manufacturers could then look up formulations, they could say what they were using, and it then gave us a measure of the MRSL conformance that we would do. That is just one facet of the standards that we have within ZDHC and the organisation. That bell means I've got to speed up as Dan needs to speak. So just moving on, I just want to talk about 8 key learnings that we needed to get from the platform to be successful as a multi-stakeholder organisation. First was staying value-led. We need to invest time and communicate to show how the programme could work and be of value to the stakeholders. Governance was very important. We had very competitive members within there, so we needed to have a very clear governance and the way data was stored, confidentiality. We needed to make sure there was no void in the antitrust issues like that. Accessibility, the benefits of being enterprising. We needed to attract users, big and small, to use the gateway. That's whether it's a big or small chemical company, whether it's a big or small manufacturer. We wanted to encourage everybody onto that. Flexibility, we need to build in the standards, tools and information to enable the stakeholders to freely implement it. Brands needed to be able to be flexible with the way they could use that information. If they've got certain ways of reporting, we had to make sure that they're able to draw that information out of the platform to be able to report back. And localization, we're a global organisation, so it's important to develop a platform that's actually multilingual. So we've got manufacturing at all parts of the globe, so English was not just the only language that it went out in, it was multilingual. Open data was very important to engage in the open data principles, because brands and other organisations, they're also using other platforms, so we wanted to make sure we can have exchange of data and we could actually marry that up so we don't get repetition within the industry. And then information quality, as I said, we worked on a very much a trust but verify model to make sure we got the data in there, but then we check it. We trust it to go in, but we verify that data as we go along. And finally, the support, user support, that was very important to us to make sure the right level of support was given to the various actors for using that the platform and to keep going. I want to hand over to Dan to explain how ADEC sort of helped us to realise this whole ambition. Sorry if I've taken all your time.
Thanks, Graham, and thanks to Kerry and the GSA for inviting us here today. I'm going to try and do this in less than 5 minutes, but by way of a very quick introduction, I'm Dan Murray, and following on from Graham's insights into the ZDHC programme, I'm planning on spending literally 2 minutes just talking about ADEC and the clean chain solution that has supported their mission to reduce hazardous chemicals, and how the turn that solution has then been used by other industries and multiple applications. We've actually been collaborating, as Graham said, for over 10 years now with ZDHC, and in that time we've built the network with over 18,000 users going onto that platform to drive these initiatives, with more than 10,000 facilities across the globe using it. The very nature of CDHC's collaborative approach has meant that the platform was developed to ingest, structure, and report data from multiple sources. This standard and data agnostic approach has also allowed ADEC and CleanChain to work across additional programs such as the Open Supply Hub, Science-Based Targets, and CDP, so merging that data to give greater value to their contributors. As well as the gateway, and to complement that, that's my type thing ringing, we also developed the CleanChain solution, which is an award-winning platform, which we're very proud of, and is contributing to helping those members reduce their chemical hazards and lead them along the roadmap to zero program. Having cut our teeth in the complex apparel and footwear value chain, CleanChain has subsequently, as I said, been adopted by organisations outside of CDHC and the apparel space, and the platform is now used by multiple verticals, including retail, electronics, and some of the wider FMCG community. I think the challenge, as Graham has always mentioned, and what is common across all of the organisations we talk to, is the complexity of the supply chain. There's multiple stakeholders, multiple standards to report against, and different environmental, social and governance disciplines, not to mention diverse geographies and varying legal requirements. If we take the example of the supply chain in apparel or a pair of jeans, you could be looking at a supply chain, if you're going back to raw material, 15 to 20 tiers deep. So therefore, to get to that level of transparency, you need to adopt tools that are simple and can be easily understood by all users. In the case of CDHC, it's important that we developed a solution that was relevant to all stakeholders, whether that was the supplier, the chemical formulator, or the brands. And critical to this success and to the Gateway and CleanChain's solution is the ability to map, capture, and report data across infinite tiers of the supply chain and can be accessible on multiple devices and applications. So regardless if you're in Portland at Nike's headquarters or you're a smallholder on a cotton farm in Dakar, you need to be able to utilise that platform. So I think the lesson for me is to look at solutions that are complementary to your supply chain. For example, if your supply chain is predominantly in Asia, make sure that you're looking at solutions that can work effectively in that region, looks at different devices, and also be aware of some of the potential data privacy restrictions that might work in that area. Additional complexity that we see, and you'll just see from this slide, some example of some of the evolving ESG regulations around Scope 3. This is a constantly evolving discussion. I could show you probably 10 different slides with different legislation on different ESG disciplines, whether that's social, chemical, etc. And therefore, it's important that you have a solution that can work and be agile and adapt to changing programs and criticalities for your business. Just to solve some of this, CleanChain developed in collaboration with Libro, a solution that actually codifies law for environmental health and safety, and then pushes that law to a particular facility in that region that's relevant to them, and then they can create corrective action plans to effectively reduce or meet that compliance. And again, what's the lesson there is, make sure that the solution is meeting your requirements. There's very little point sending the legal considerations of China to a factory in Turkey. You want to break it down, make it simple, and give them the best opportunity to achieve that at the lowest cost. I won't go into this, we haven't got enough time, but I think really the point here was to show that it's important to consider a whole process when working. One of the lessons we've learned working with CDHC and the apparel sector is the importance of any program adopted can support the collection of data, and that while this can be technology-led, for example, using AI bingo, to data mine utility bills or data sheets, safety data sheets, it's equally important to consider that you might need to have human in the loop to support that. Technology can answer so much, but there's also quite often a person part to it that needs to support the program. And finally, because I have run out of time, please grab me in any of the breaks. I'm happy to share a little bit more information on this. I just wanted to show an example, really. This is one of our clients, Target, who's a large US retailer, if you haven't heard of them. And the story I wanted to share here was they started working with us on their ZDHC commitments, but ultimately we were already talking to their supply chain, and they saw the benefit as they understood their Scope 3 GHG commitment, that they could utilise the platform to reduce duplication to collect Scope 3 GHG data out of their supply chain, and then combine the data to give them a better value. So there we go. Sorry, slightly over. As I say, please grab me in the break, and I'll happily elaborate on some of those slides.
Okay, thanks Dan, and thanks Greg.